How many times have we said that we need to free our minds from the constraints and toxic habits imposed on us, especially by social media? Today we'll understand why all of this, these bad habits, can change our habits, opinions, and beliefs, and they don't let us live freely. Watch the video until the very end and you'll understand why you shouldn't buy the house where you'll live. Western society has based its history on invasions, first manifested with African slaves, but also from all other parts of the world through invasions in the south and east of the world. But what we'll see today is that in modern days they have done much more. They are making slaves of all the inhabitants of the free world, obviously free in quotes. Two indicators testify this and make it extremely evident. Let's talk about freedom of speech. We think that in the West there is freedom of expression and speech, but if we clear our minds of all the garbage that the system puts into us and analyze the issue, we would realize how untrue this is. Because we have the freedom of speech until no one listens to us, the moment a person gathers an audience ready to listen to what that person has to say, if the things they have to say are against the system, that person will be silenced instantly. We have lived and learned about these coercive operations, especially in the recent past. The right communication is that of the system, imposed, and it's possible to talk about different concepts only in a low voice or in one's own living room. The operations of cancelling free thought and critical thinking have taken an impressive turn in recent years, and the events that have taken place have had the sole purpose of accelerating all this. But honestly, I have stopped to think and I have realized that it has always been like this. The politics of good and evil, of absolute right imposed from above, and anyone who asked questions was either foolish or blasphemous. If we think about Christianity in history and how protest movements have arisen causing revolts and revolutions, but often suppression, this mentality of football fans not standing on one side because rationally we have evaluated that it is the right thing to do just because we support our team no matter what, even if it plays badly or loses, we can easily understand how suicidal this is if applied outside of a football field. You might be wondering how all this relates to the video title, Not Buying the House Where You Live. This is the second point, how they made us trapped like hamsters. You can be more of a hamster without an apparent cage, mind you. I said apparent chains. I took the house as an example because especially in certain cultures like the Latin ones, you grow up with the idea that you have to buy the house, or as they say, make the house, because if not, your life will not be complete and you will live in uncertainty. I just ask you to stop for a moment and think rationally. We are now convinced that we buy the house because we have a steady job, another chain, and we will see how. So I hear things like, once the house is mine, no one can put me on the street, or I will always have a roof over my head, or even so I can design the house of my dreams. But the fact is that the house will be yours only if you have the money to buy it in cash. But most young people still take out 30-year mortgages. But my first question is, how long do you think you'll live? 1,000 years? The house will be yours at best by the time you turn 55, and until then you will have the obligations of a property, but will pay a monthly ransom to the bank that can freely raise your rates, or a government that can apply regulations that will force you to dip into your wallet to adjust your property. But you have a secure job. Remember Mario's story? He had a secure job, and faced with the opportunity to live a new successful life, he gave up because he had his house, his mortgage, and his house held hostage by the bank and the state. How many people do you know like Mario? Or worse, maybe it's you who are watching this video in this situation. My dear, open your eyes and start thinking with your own brain. Don't let others putting rubbish in your mind. Take a piece of paper and a pen and write down all the numbers about costs you have to face when you enter in the bank's loop. Choosing to live in rent, choosing a house based on the needs of the moment and with the flexibility to leave everything behind to start over somewhere else in the world without worries. You buy the house maybe at 20 or 30 years old, with 2 children, so a house with at least 3 bedrooms, but when the house becomes yours, in the best case scenario, there will only be 2 of you left with a 30-year-old house with huge management costs that, after 30 years, will need to be fixed if not restored. Doesn't the light bulb turn on for you even now? If you are renting and the regulations change and you have to update the systems, whose responsibility is it? The landlord's. If you have taken out a mortgage, whose responsibility is it? The bank's or yours? Take a pen and paper. I did it. You will find out by putting all the costs in a row. You will realize, in addition to the feeling of freedom that you will receive, you will earn money over time by staying in rent. Unfortunately, I came to this conclusion very late in my life because, like all of us, I grew up in a family with this ingrained feeling. In fact, my parents bought a huge house, and in the end, my mother, who was left alone, lived in a useless huge house with 1,000 jobs to do, and when she sold it, she made very little money. I bought houses, losing a lot of money. Then I realized that it is better to rent a house designed for the needs of the moment, with the possibilities of the moment. And if the conditions change, you can get a bigger or smaller one, or maybe one in an exotic place, because destiny has opened a door that will change your life forever. When I decided to leave Italy to move to England, I started with my principles well rooted and began the usual routine of working to buy a house. Then, in my readings and research, I stumbled upon a series of analyses, and I invite you to make these comparisons, in which a light bulb went on for me, and I realized that I was chaining myself. I ran to the builder, cancelled the contract, called the bank, blocked the mortgage, and went in search of a house for rent. And this was my fortune, because from there a series of opportunities came to me that I could not have seized if I had been chained to that house in Kent. But that's another story. If you want, we can talk about it another time. Remember to write in the comments if you want us to continue talking about this topic, or what opportunities opened up for me thanks to that choice. But also write me about your life or family experience. The more we talk, maybe all together, we can free ourselves from those chains that are being put on us and be free to choose again. Because remember that choosing freely, really freely, is the most important and beautiful thing we can have. Now it's time, if you like this video, to give a huge thumb up. Subscribe to the channel, our community is growing incredibly fast. And invite a friend in order to have more people to discuss together of the opportunity life is giving us, and how often we don't see it as blinded from a toxic system that is destroying our lives. See you soon, brother and sister.